for Green Our Planet. I'm a retired CCSD teacher as of last May. I always tell people I took a week and a half off and then I went to work full time. Nothing is as hard as what you do. And I know that. I did it for 29 years. When a child learns naturally and in an environment that's natural, it's real learning. It's what I call real learning. Sometimes people here ask me, because I'll say, oh, that's flat learning, and they think, and that to me is worksheets. So I always used the garden as a place where kids could get in the dirt and learn about all the things that they need to learn about. I taught 4-year-olds, which is the hardest job ever. After that, I taught kindergarten. Do you teach 4-year-olds? I taught kinder for 10 years, and then I taught first grade for 10 years. I taught 23 years at Lummis Elementary. So I think all I like to do is give you permission to work in the garden. I'd always created my own curriculum and taught real life teaching. So when we were in those days, I always tell people, I would look and see when the principal at that time, my wonderful principal left, was going to a meeting. And I took my kids to the garden, and we did lessons, and we planted. I don't know how we thought it ever got planted and things grew, because we didn't have farmers and things in those days. But I worked out in the garden whenever I could. I hid on my back porch to carve a pumpkin. I mean, that's really sad, but that's what I had to do at the time. It was just an era where No Child Left Behind, a lot of emphasis on language arts and math, which I've never understood how those get separated, because it's all one thing to me. And if you use science as the vehicle to teach reading, then kids are more engaged and they're actually going to want to read what they're reading. So I continued to just do what I do, just in a very sneaky way sometimes. We're in a better, sadly to say, because science is now being part of our professional growth, whatever it is, now science is, people are waking up, and we have science teachers, and we're supposed to teach science now. Although, when you get your schedule and it says from 2:50 to 3:01, you wonder how that's going to happen. So I get it, and it's not against you when we say teachers are teaching 20 minutes a week of science. It's just real life. It's what's happening. So I want to give you permission, and I want to give you a few quick ideas. A couple of things I've done over the years. First, I wanted to ask you this. Is this your number one reason that you don't go out to the garden? Is it time because you have a schedule? Do you have a curriculum? We have a curriculum. Support. Those years that I used to sneak out to the garden were the years I didn't have the support, but you can find a way. Okay, I'm sorry, people, but a lot of people put this. We have 360 days of decent weather in Las Vegas. So it is hot, but guess what? It's not hot to the kids. It's hot to us. And it's not cold to the kids. It's cold to us. I did some lessons at Long Elementary School in the winter, and I promise, I woke up in the morning, I'm going to be honest, and I'd go, oh my gosh, it's so cold. I hate cold weather. So it'd be like 36, and I'd think, I can't do it. But I'd get there, and the sun would be shining, and I would be out in the garden, and I had a jacket on, and it was fine. And it was where kids needed to be, because nobody else goes outside when it's that temperature in the desert. And then this one. Please don't use this one, because this excuse is, and all of you that are teachers know this. If you have a bad day in your classroom, it's not because of the kids. It's because you're having a bad day, or you're not prepared, or you don't have it. I mean, there are a lot of challenges out there, I know that. I lived it. But behavior in the garden is better than it is in the classroom, because they're engaged and because it's exciting and they want to be there. I've never used it as a tool. And I have a real hard time with people saying you can't go to the garden if you're not good, because the garden is where they need to be if they're not being good. That's what I used as a tool my whole career. You know, Johnny's having a bad day, so let's go take a walk in the garden. Let's go get some mint and smell that, and let's smell some lavender, and maybe stick some in your pocket, and maybe it'll permeate your body and you'll be calm. So that's how I taught my entire career. Now, I had years, once MAPS started, okay, and you had to test 3 times a year, and then AIMS 3 times a year, and I didn't have much time to teach because I was so busy testing. So I came up with that couple of years, I came up with something that helped me to get out to the garden once a week. So our library is central, and then the garden is connected to it. Some of you have, you know, you're on the back 40, which works too. But just find a day. So I said, okay, every Wednesday when I pick up my kids from the library, because it had been about 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks since I'd been to the garden and done anything. So I thought, I've got to come up with a strategy. So I made this little goofy detective book, and I took it with me when I would pick the kids up at the library, and we would walk through the garden. So we would just walk through and we'd observe, and they'd say, Miss Cormier, look, there's holes all in this one, and there's ants all over this plant, and we would write everything down, every single thing. I just walked through, and they would observe and you know, get excited about certain things, and look, there's a little green tomato, and so we wrote every single thing down. And then we would go back into the classroom, and I put this on the Elmo, and we'd talk about it. We'd talk about, you know, I wonder why those leaves had holes in them. I didn't see any insects or anything, so what is it? And then I, you know, jumped off and I bought this awesome book, Good Bug, Bad Bug. And, you know, you always have those, I shouldn't say this, but you have those Tootie boys, you know, those little boys that you love, but they're always in some kind of mischief. So they were my detectives. So they would have to go through this book, and they would have to find the damage and then what we thought the damage was, and then they would report to the class. So while we were all moving on to something else, they were busy doing this, and you know, I would just, every week we did that. So then I got back into the habit of getting out into the garden, and raise your hand if you use a science notebook. Yay. This is just the best tool you can use, because when you use the science note, not only does it help with informational writing and teaching them how to draw a technical drawing, that butterflies don't have eyelashes and ladybugs don't have big smiles and bows in their hair. I mean, it really does help you. And when you teach little people, that's just what they like to do. But when you say, okay, we're going to the garden, have a seat, open up your science notebook to the first empty page. Yeah, sorry, I know that never happens, but we try. Put the date, because guess what? Real scientists put the date on everything so they can look back. And then open up your notebook, and I have an essential question. That's a big science question. Why do, whatever it is, why do some plants have huge leaves? And then they're the scientist, and then you've got them. I mean, they're in the garden, and they're serious, and they're scientists. And not only that, I heard one teacher say, I never use a science notebook for grading. I get that, but as a formative grade, to see if they followed directions, to see if they did what they were supposed to, it's a really good tool for that. And just teaching them how to structure this. A lot of times, I would have them draw windows so that they could find 4 different plants. And I always model everything in that first, you know, a lot of modeling and teaching. Another thing I do, which is an entire day lesson, you know how you're really tired at the very beginning of school? That first Friday when you feel like, I'm not going to be able to do this another year? That first Friday, set up your science notebook that day. It takes the whole day, because you have to, how many of you use FOSS? I know in Clark County it's adopted. So I look at those 3 FOSS kits, and we would count 20 pages, put a sticky note in there, write the title of that one, count 20 pages, put the next one, and then the last one was always gardening. And I would, so that when I went out I like to alleviate any problems that might happen. So I don't want to stop and look through everybody's notebook. So turn to the garden section, turn to the first empty page. It works most of the time. It gets you there. Take extra pencils. Someone always breaks the pencil, forgets the pencil, doesn't have a pencil. It's not the right pencil. So just being, I always, it's a terrible expression too, but I have a lot of those. I always said I never go and do anything when I'm not armed and dangerous. I have everything with me that I need. So when you're going to the garden and you have your science notebooks and you start your lesson, then the behaviors go away. You've given them something. And I forgot my little bag of leaves because that's one of the first lessons I want to show you. So I did that for 10 minutes. That's just a good excuse to get out to the garden for 10 minutes a week. And then when you start feeling more comfortable, the content knowledge that you can teach in a garden is unbelievable. Just the amount of content and vocabulary. So what we're doing is we're taking children and we're giving them lists of 20 words to memorize and learn the definition of, when we can be kindergartners in the garden, first graders in the garden, second graders. They naturally have those. And I never used the baby words. I always used the actual words. I didn't even call them good bad bugs, bad bugs. I called them harmfuls and beneficials. So all that vocabulary that they're having to take on that big 5th grade test that's going to be in the newspaper, that can all be given to them over the years if we all do our job. So I hate holding this thing. It's really hard for me. So I want you to have some quick and easy garden lessons, and I didn't do my little clicker thing. I never remember to do this. So challenges. It's kind of our day. There's a new research article out. It's from Psychology Today, Frontiers in Psychology, and I just love that it talks about that not only does going outside benefit children at that time, but for hours later. So you're in Testingville right now, right? So this is the time that you take these breaks and you get them outside, and then when they go back in, that same calmness lasts, and there's research to back it up. I always had all my research to back up what I did. So if I did have a principal that said, recess, no more recess, I would pull out my great big binder and I'd go, look at all this research that says that kids need to have recess. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. The year that I had to hide in the garden, that was the year it didn't work. But it says, what is the effect of lessons in nature on subsequent classroom engagement? Do they leave pupils too keyed up to focus, as some teachers worry, like we were talking about the behavior? Or do they enhance a class's engagement? So after research, it's proven. This is a 2018 research article. So it's a good one to grab onto. And I think there's going to be a file, the shared drive, that I can give you access to, and I'm going to put some of these lessons in that I'm going to show you, and I'll put this article in here because it's really good for you to have in your arsenal. Okay, so a few easy lessons. So you have no idea how to get started. So the first thing I do, the very first lesson I did every year, and I got so tickled because one teacher said, well, if everybody does that lesson, then the garden won't have any leaves. And I thought, well, I don't think they'll all do it on the same day. But if I had 22 children in my class, I would get 11 little Ziploc bags. I'd go out and gather 3 different leaves and put it in each bag. Okay, so you have 11 sets of 3 different leaves. So it's a really good one to start. You could do it in kindergarten. You could do it in 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. You could probably even do it in middle school. And then I sit down and I talk about, are all the leaves the same? Well, they know they're not all the same, but how are they different? And then I have them, I model the whole thing. I pull out a leaf, I look at it, I feel it, I smell it. Ooh, this one smells like a tomato. It's kind of scratchy. I wonder why it's scratchy. So I model all of that dialogue with them. And then I put them in pairs. I have them buddy up. They usually have a buddy up partner anyway in the classroom. And then I give the buddies a pair and a magnifying glass, if you've taught about magnifying glasses. If not, the magnifying glasses dig in the dirt. They do all kinds of things. So it's another thing that you have to at least teach them how to use. And then I have them go out, search. They have to identify. So they take one leaf out at a time. They smell it. They don't taste it. They look at it. We talk about the 5 senses prior to this. And then they have to go out and find that plant. They match it. And then they see if they know what kind it is. If they don't know what type of plant, if it's not marked, they can raise their hand if they're not sure. And then they have to draw it in their little notebooks. You know, they've done the 4 windows. And then they write and label it. Kindergarten, I don't have them label it. I just have them draw it, because you're doing really well if you get them to do that at the beginning of the year. But you're setting the stage for how you want them to use the science notebook and how they use the garden. And then I'm going to really show my age here. When I finish enclosure, when we come back, they meet me back. I do what's called an LOL. Does anybody in here know what an LOL is besides laugh out loud? The kids get a big kick out of it, because I say, now we're going to do our LOL. And so we draw a line at the very bottom, across the bottom. We put LOL, and that's our line of learning, because it's real important that they have internalized what they did and why they did it, and in their science notebook. So sometimes that's difficult. So sometimes I give them a sentence stem. I'll say, today I found out, and then I have them turn to a partner, say it out loud, because then it's there, and then they can go into their notebooks. Now with 5th grade, I didn't have to do that, but it also helps you from a lot of this. So they've talked to a partner, they've written it down, and then I'll have 3 or 4 share what they found out. Some leaves are jagged, some leaves are different color greens. You can teach hues. That green is many different colors. And that's just kind of a 30-minute lesson. So it's a good way to start, because not only have you started teaching them how to use the science notebook, but you've also taught them how to work in the garden. And you've taught them what's growing in the garden just by that one lesson, different things that are growing in the garden. And then what I would suggest, if you're in this session, then I guess you want a few easy lessons. That's what it's called. So then I suggest just the next week when and I would do this during writing time, reading time. I mean, you can always sneak in 30 minutes. And then I would move on to just on Sunday when you're doing all your lesson plans, on Curriculum Engine, plug in one thing. Like this week, okay, I looked at leaves last week, we can look at stems. Stems are pretty cool. Some are kind of in a square, and some are laying down. I wonder what that's called when it's laying down. And why would it lay down? Why would a pumpkin stem be laying down? So much that you can talk about. So start out real easy where it's not reading a 45-minute lesson that you need to memorize and get a lot of materials, because that's what stops us from doing what we need to be doing. So then I move on to, then searching out. We have a great curriculum that has lessons that you can expand on, or you can make really, really short. One of the lessons I like to do with kindergarten is Planting a Rainbow. Are you guys familiar with this book? And then when you go to Lowe's, you can stuff lots of these in your pocket, these little paint chips, but they have them now with holes in them. Can you believe that? I think they did it just for teachers that steal paint chips all the time. I was stuffing them in my coat pocket, and my husband goes, those are free, right? I go, I know, but I don't know if I'm supposed to take this many. So it's really good with kinder, because see that hole? They can just match it right up against the plant. And they come in little sets of 3. But and I'm real selective, like when I hand these out, I know who to give the green one to. And I know who to give the purple one to, because the green person gets a purple one, and he's not going to look around for something purple. He needs something green, or she. And that's just a really easy lesson to do in the garden. There are a lot of these books. I don't know if you've seen them, Plant Parts. Our farmers read them a lot. I borrowed these out of the farmer. So they're very simple. Did you guys see, what's the guy's name on Jeopardy? James or whatever. Did you see how he's learned all of his knowledge? Did he? Children's books. I believe that. I used to go home all the time and tell my husband, did you know I learned that in a 2nd grade book? There's so much information out there, but this has really nice pictures and it's a good book. I had one teacher from Helen Her, and she had first graders, and she would just go out to the garden and they would all take a book and read to the plants. That's a great lesson. That's a great lesson to go read to the plants. I mean, at least it gets you outside and they're reading, and she found a way to get out to the garden. This is plant plumbing. It's another one. It's about roots and stems, and then flowers. So literature is awesome. And if you go out there, just don't spend your whole time reading a book and kids don't get to explore the garden. That's the only thing that I would tell you gets in the way sometimes. But if you read a book about flowers and then maybe go out and go on a search for flowers and what do flowers do and why are flowers there? Well, as Kim McCory says, plants can't walk. So they have to have pretty flowers to attract those pollinators so that we can get business done. Leaves. If you've not read this, The Dandelion Seed, this is an amazing book, and I'll leave these books up here. If you have, which writing series is it? This is in the second grade writing, Being a Writer. This is the most hysterical book. It is so cute. It is, I will never, not ever eat a tomato. So I did this with kindergarten, and then this brother is trying to get his sister to eat tomatoes, and she will never, not ever eat a tomato. And so he talks about them as like a Martian name, and he finally gets her to eat them. But what I did is I bought, the heirloom tomatoes, the little baby heirloom tomatoes. Because, I mean, what kindergartner is going to taste a green tomato? Well, after we read this book, they did. And I don't know if you were in the chef session, but one of the things that I always said is you don't have to eat it, but you can't say you don't like it until you try it. Just give it a try. And you always have those couple that just are so stubborn. This is a good one, Hey Little Ant. Are you familiar with this book? I like it because it's social emotional. It's teaching, and the reason I did this book is I was doing some lessons at a school, and there were a crowd of about 7 or 8 little students, and they were just stepping on ants for fun. Because they don't know, they don't think about it. And so when you read this book, and it's also a great opinion, they have to form an opinion. The end of the book, let's see if I didn't have this in my hand, I could do this. At the end of the book, it leaves you with his shoe up, and you have to write the ending. You very seldom have someone that wants to step on the ant, but it's just teaching them to be respectful of all nature. It's just important. And you get in opinion writing and all that social emotional. Raw radishes is a really good one because it shows actual pictures. And then tops and bottoms. We all know tops and bottoms. It's still a great one for plant parts. So if you read this in the classroom as a lesson, and then you go out into the garden, you can talk about plant parts that we eat. So that's a great lesson to do on the fly. You just go out and they have to find a stem that we eat. They have to find a flower that we eat. When they find out broccoli is a flower, it blows their mind. Seeds, different things that they have, different plant parts that they eat. This is a good one for kindergarten too. It's a building story. It's called Jack's Garden. It's kind of like the house that Jack built. So it's a building story. And it's a good one. And then, I don't know if you've read this, but it kind of reminds me of Gardening in the Desert, The Curious Garden. He builds gardens everywhere and makes it beautiful so that we can all enjoy it. And I think I'm done. Am I done? Did she put up a 5-minute? Okay. I have 3 minutes. God, I didn't think I could talk that long. And I didn't let you have any questions. So does anybody have any questions?
I was just wondering, for maybe 4th and 5th grade, do you have a good lesson that would be for a little bit older kids?
Well, and I didn't talk about that for older. So when for 2 years at Lummis, I was the farmer. On Wednesdays, I had a sub in my room, and I did all the lessons. So I kind of let the garden lead me into what was a good lesson to do that week. So for 4th and 5th grade, I did a lot on soil. Okay. So one time I got there and it was freezing cold outside and it wasn't supposed to be. So we got thermometers, and I just ran to Smith's and bought meat thermometers because I also wanted to teach them to read a thermometer. I didn't want to do digital because I wanted them to read it. So temperature, and you wouldn't believe the lessons you get out of that. Well, why is that bed colder than this bed? But they can still do the leaves, the stems, because you can just do it more in depth. I was at one school, and I think Jean was there too. Is Jean in here? And the fourth grade teacher said, God, I just taught photosynthesis. I didn't even think about going to the garden. And I thought, oh no.